Open your mind. Okay, I tried. For those of y'all who have seen the TV show Rick and Morty, there is an episode where they all got these little guys in their stomach, these like mutants, and all they know how to say is "open your mind." That's where I got the inspiration for talking about what we're going to talk about today. While it is a goofy way of showing it, the concept of having an open mind is really, really good, and it was spot on the way they portrayed it in the show. It's definitely going to require a bit of an open mind to take in this video today, especially after that cringe intro. So hopefully you're already somewhat open-minded, and if not, perhaps this can be the fresh perspective that your life was missing. If you are already open-minded, maybe you could use some work on it. Maybe you could open your mind a bit more. Let's find out. So I was once very, very closed-minded. You couldn't tell me a damn thing, whether it was about my choices, other people, religion, politics. I had a little bit of a phase where I thought I knew everything. But yeah, I just wouldn't listen. And even worse, I would become defensive about my own ideas. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was literally handicapping my own knowledge and my own experience of the world. And it's not like things were going particularly well for me either. I've talked about it previously. My life a couple years ago was not in a very good spot. So maybe my life could have been better had I listened. I mean, I was barely an adult, so what did I really know about the world? Being 18 doesn't mean a damn thing. So again, maybe if I would have just listened to somebody, heard some people out instead of just shutting off all outside knowledge, maybe I could have made my life slightly better. Who knows? But thankfully, after a little bit of time, I got rid of that ignorance. And after just, years of misinformation and unnecessary conflicts, I finally began to open my mind. And it started very slowly, but over time, I became much more open minded and I became confident, most importantly, in my values and my beliefs. And I was mature enough to at least hear people out and just consider what they had to say. Becoming open minded absolutely changed my life. It made life such a better, such a more rich experience. And I had so many more interesting conversations. I learned way more, and I made so many more friends just by listening. I know this can do the same for anyone, especially for you if you're listening right now. If you're seeking these kinds of videos, these kinds of informations, you're definitely the type of person this is going to be ideal for. And that is why in today's video, I'm going to be talking about what being open-minded actually is, why it's extremely important, and how you can start opening your mind today. So let's get right into it. What is being open-minded? Let me get a drink of water first. All right. So open-mindedness is receptiveness to new ideas. Open-mindedness relates to the way in which people approach the views and knowledge of other people. So now that we got that boring textbook definition out of the way, let's go a little bit deeper. To me, being open-minded means that you're willing to take in information and then you choose what to do with that information. And you're going to filter it through your own beliefs and your own values. And now I really want to make it very clear, being open-minded does not mean blindly accepting and just agreeing with what you hear. It really just means being open and being willing to learn. It requires confidence in yourself, and it also requires maturity. Sometimes you might disagree with what you hear, but at least you heard someone out and you didn't just completely shut yourself down from learning something new. A really good concept to understand here is known as the ocean, and that's an acronym. It's a well-known personality theory. It's known as also the Big Five. If you've taken any personality tests, it's probably been based on this model. And the Big Five model, it categorizes personality traits into five broad dimensions. So the first one being O, which is openness. The second one is C for conscientiousness. The third one is E for extroversion. And the fourth one is A for agreeableness. And the fifth one is N for neuroticism. Now, according to Psychology Today, individuals who exhibit high levels of openness tend to pursue a diverse range of experiences. A closed-minded person, however, does not usually have many diverse experiences. So this openness trait determines how open you are to new experiences and information. And being open-minded is just a characteristic of the trait of openness. And there are also levels to it. So some people might naturally be higher. Some people might naturally be lower. the goal here is to just try and at least get us into like a middle ground, right? No matter where we're at. And now let's talk about why it's important for us to be open-minded. Now, it's one of my selected interests on Bumble. It's that important. But no, being serious, openness is a personality trait that has been linked to intelligence and divergent thinking. That's according to the National Institute of Health. So if you are a closed-minded person, which you're probably not if you're here, but let's just say you are, consider how much you've missed out on. You know, all of us are a little bit closed-minded to a certain extent. And some of the things we were taught in school are crazy. Some of the things we were taught from religion are crazy. I mean, just think about it. We're literally taught about gravity, this invisible thing that keeps everything here, and that's real. We all accept that after we heard them out, right? I mean, it makes sense. And then with religion, they got plenty of things that help us out, like take meditation, for example. You think like, oh, just sitting there and making chants, what would that do, right? But then now we have scientific information that literally backs up what that does for you. So regardless of how you feel about either school of thought, they both have done some incredible things and some bad things too, but we won't talk about those. Personally, being open to science has provided me with so much knowledge to improve my life with research-backed practices like the sauna, stretching, motivation, and the same thing goes for commonly practiced religious ideas like the sense of community, meditation, and diets. And funny enough, many of the principles in both of these schools of thoughts actually kind of touch on each other and seem to support each other. Going a little bit further into why this is important, it's actually a rule of life. For those of you who saw my recent video about Jordan Peterson's 12 rules for life, he actually covers this as his 9th rule, and that is assume the person that you're speaking to knows something that you don't. Now, I think this is a really good rule because it's true. No matter who you're talking to, they know something you don't know. It might not be super important, but it could be. And I used to judge a book by its cover. That ignorance did not last very long. There's been just too many times in my life where I've just been completely shocked by what I've learned from someone. And just because someone might seem a little odd or not the brightest, there still can be a lot of knowledge and experience to gain from anyone. And it might not even be them directly communicating the knowledge. Maybe it just makes you realize something about yourself, like, oh, wow, I'm not a very good listener, or wow, I just judged that person, but they're actually smart. Or maybe you learn something from the other person that you want to avoid doing in the future. There's been a couple times where I've had like older coworkers kind of complaining about their relationships or whatever, their marriages, and I'm just like, yo, let me take some notes because I don't want to end up like that when I'm 40, right? So maybe you all can think of someone who, maybe you've seen someone like as soon as they hear something they disagree with in a conversation, they just immediately shut down, the ears are off, and they're just mentally preparing what they're going to say. And it's not a conversation anymore. Now it's a game of winning who's right and who's wrong. That's really annoying, right? So we don't want to be that person. I'm giving you that mental image. That way you can be like, wow, I don't want to be that douche, right? Let's choose to be intelligent instead. There's just no need to get defensive or standoffish about our beliefs. And obviously there's some extremes, like if someone's talking about like terrorism or something crazy, you have discretion for that. But just think about opening your mind, opening your heart, and just be mature enough to filter and accept that it's okay to disagree with someone and you can just talk about it. It doesn't have to be shut down or defense or attack. Just chill out. Maybe you learn something cool. So let's talk about how you can start opening your mind and learning some cool stuff today. It really isn't that hard as long as you have a decent sense of self-awareness. I also have a video on that too. It really just requires a little bit of time and it requires the intention to being open-minded. So you really need to have the intention in your life, whether you need to write this down, put it on the wall, whatever you got to do. Just have the intention. I want to be a more open-minded person. So let's start with number 1. We want to become a better listener. And do you remember that person who I was just talking about who is only thinking about the response instead of listening? It's a pretty common thing. I'm not going to be a hypocrite here. I used to do it. Sometimes I kind of catch myself doing it here and there. You really just got to avoid doing this and you got to practice being a better listener. It really does require dropping your ego and being mindful of listening. And that can be kind of confusing. How am I supposed to listen if I'm being mindful? But once you start to do it, you'll figure it out. One simple way of becoming a better listener is just by simply restating what the person just said in a short sentence. So you don't have to say everything, but they just told you about something like, oh yeah, blah 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 blah, my dog was like really really happy or something. You could be like, oh, so you're saying that you think your dog was really happy because of blah 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 blah, for a stupid simple example. And this just means listening. You're gonna have to actually listen if you're gonna restate it, and then you also process what they said more. Then you can think of a better response much easier. Instead of thinking of what you're gonna say while they're talking, you simply restating what you just heard is a very simple task. So while you're restating what they just said, then you can kind of think about what you were gonna say in a better way. It gives you a little bit of time to think about the response. Another great way is you can read the book How to Win Friends and Influence People, Influence Anyone by Dale Carnegie. I read this book. It really changed the way that I see interactions with people. It has great advice on how to improve your listening skills and just conversation skills in general. Becoming a better listener, it takes time, it takes practice. Just do your best to be mindful and catch yourself when you're stopping listening, right? Number two, we want to stop watching the news and stop reading social media comments. The news is just constantly pushing closed minded, negative agendas, and they're promoting division. It's all for the people that own those networks. They want it to be that way. I'm not going to get too crazy and go on a rant here, but they really are just profiting off of the negativity bias. Negativity sells. That's why all the headlines are negative, negative, negative. Everything's bad. It's really not. Step outside. It's not as bad as they say it is. And you might be thinking, isn't it closed minded to not hear what the news has to say? No, it's not. It's garbage. Just turn it off. I do not like the news at all, if you can't tell. And when it comes to social media comments, I know it can be fun. Sometimes people say some wild stuff in there. But a lot of times it's just people arguing about the dumbest things on there. Nobody's going to talk like that in person. And it's just a back and forth of I'm right, you're wrong. It's not how we actually discuss ideas. I used to do it. I won't be a hypocrite. It's lame. Just stop doing it if you do. And the third thing I'm going to recommend for y'all is consider exploring religion and philosophy. I actually used to be an atheist. I eventually accepted I don't know a damn thing. Humility really does go a long way. By being open minded, I discovered so many great thinkers and really helpful ideas from religion and philosophy, and I'm very grateful for that fact. Stoicism and meditation have really just positively impacted my life, and I'm just a lower class suburban white dude living in America, right? The great ideas of Greek philosophers and Chinese monks were never a part of my ancestry or upbringing, so I had to seek this information and be open minded to actually taking it in. A good way you can do this is by starting to read new books, listen to people lecture about these topics. Just find a topic that sounds interesting to you and see what you can learn. Maybe you learn something great and it helps your life. Maybe you learn something useless and it doesn't feel right. Either way, you're on the right path to enlightenment. The ideas from both of these disciplines have brought so much wisdom, so much concepts to the world, and we'd be ignorant to think that we're above them, right? They're all just doing their best to reach enlightenment, to understand the universe. That's really what the question they're trying to get to, right? Is like, what's going on? What is this? What is that? And a lot of these ideas did come from centuries past. So we might not agree with, everything they did or believe, but that's okay. We're just going to come at it with an open mind. We're not judging them for who they were. If they got a good idea, let's hear it out, right? So to wrap up, today we talked about what being open-minded actually is, why it's so important, and I just gave you 3 ways on how you can start being more open-minded today. As I said before, I used to be very, very closed-minded. Becoming open-minded has just greatly increased the joy I find in my life. I mean, better experiences, better knowledge, better ideas myself, and better relationships. I know this can greatly improve your life, increase your relationships, increase your experiences. So I'm really hoping you're feeling open-minded enough to try out what I gave you today. Anyways, I appreciate y'all stopping in and checking out the content. If you're looking to read a little something, I write about the same exact things that I talk about on here on my blog called tylersguide.us. Anyways, thanks again for stopping in today. I'll see y'all in the next one. Take care, everybody.